But Japan now finds itself in a Shinto slump. That's right, they're in a slump big time. Now, how could this be? We just talked about this rapid economic growth period after World War II where they exploded, and they did. In the 1960s, they had double-digit economic growth rates for the entire country, 10, 11, 12%. In the 70s, they still had 6, 7% growth rates. Even into the 1980s, they had a respectable 4 to 5% economic growth rate year after year after year. And this is what made Japan into the second richest country on planet Earth right after the United States. And they boomed across the board, too. This wasn't just Toyotas. Their service sectors boomed. Things like banking, finance, real estate got really big. Their technology sector exploded. Personal computing, cell phones, information technologies. I mean, you think about Japan when you think about these things. But they also held on to their industrial base big time. They still did produce tremendous amounts of high-quality automobiles, personal electronics. They still kept their vibrant steel industry and shipbuilding industries. And they were doing all of this awesomely well and selling stuff to all over planet Earth, making serious money. So much money was accumulated, in fact, by the 1980s, it really sparked a consumer boom. That is, people started buying and buying and buying stuff in Japan. They were already making money selling stuff abroad. Now they're making money selling stuff internally in their internal economy. And that was kind of new. That's not been the history of Japan. They're not materialistic like the United States. We accept it here. We buy, consume, give me more. And that's what keeps the American economy going, quite frankly. That had not been the case in Japan. It really launches in the 1980s in a very big way. So much wealth was accumulated there that people on the street were spending a lot more money, but also the high rollers, the big business sector. They had so much wealth, they ran out of things to buy in Japan, so they started spending and investing abroad and buying up chunks of things in other parts of the world. This came home to roost in the United States, where the Japanese ended up buying up big sections of Times Square in New York, or big office complexes or major buildings in Chicago or in LA and Miami. This became a very big deal, and actually it was a little threatening to a lot of Americans who paid attention to this. They're like, what's going on? Who's this big rich Godzilla in town who's buying up all this stuff? And it got compounded big time because at the same time, the Japanese car manufacturers started to make big inroads into the American consumer class as well. So more people than ever started buying a Honda and Toyota and Mazda. I gotta admit, I drove a Mazda back in the 80s myself. So this, coupled with that, made for a real anti-Japanese sentiment that kind of permeated American society. I remember it, I was there. And people would say, you drive a Mazda? Are you gonna drive one of them rice burners? Well, hell, if you want to buy a Japanese car, why don't you move to Japan? That's un-American. You better buy a Ford or Chevy. So there was a real tangible fear because America was in a big recession itself at that time. And so this was like, what is this Japanese monster we've helped create that's coming in here, buying our properties and making us buy their cars? That was America, though. What was happening back in Japan? More important for this story. So many people, so much wealth, buying up so much stuff that prices, of course, naturally inflate. As more and more people are buying more and more stuff, the prices naturally gravitate up. And the prices got so overly inflated and so out of control that it was inevitable that this bubble was going to burst. And burst it did. And the reality check on the inflated prices in Japan came smashing down on Japan in early 1990 like Godzilla leveling Tokyo. Except this was just for prices, it wasn't for people, okay? Trillions were lost when this bubble broke, particularly in the real estate markets. And I would have a little aside here and say it's very similar to the current 2008 recession based on overinflated stock market and real estate prices in America. But that's exactly what happened in Japan in 1990. It was all overpriced and everything came crashing down. When this happened, the consumers of Japan reverted back to their frugal nature. They're not usually, typically, historically, big spenders. They're actually big savers. They have high rates of personal savings. Everybody puts all their money under the mattress or in the bank account their entire life to buy a house. They are not big into spending, and now more so than ever. After their big consumer boom of the 80s, they've reverted back. Because of this, the economy is kind of flat. People at home aren't buying as much as they used to, and as the world over, people aren't buying as much of the exports as they used to either. So the economy is kind of very rocky ever since the 1990s. They actually had another recession in late 1990s. The technology bubble burst there just like it did in the United States. So things have just been continued to get deflated and pushed down in the Japanese economy. So much so that people aren't spending many money at all, and the government is beside itself trying to get the economy going again, so much that they made interest rates in the Central Bank of Japan zero. Zero. What's that mean? It means if you put $10,000 in your Japanese savings account this year and come back in 100 years, they're going to give you $10,000 back. You're not making a dime. The interest rate is zero. Now, why would a government do that? Well, if a government wants you to save money, and all governments do this, they can change the interest rates of their central banking system, which affects the rest of the economy. And if a government wants you to save money, they'll make the interest rate really high. They'll take it up at 5, 6, 10%, because for a consumer, it's a good investment. You could put your money in the bank and make 10% on it. Cool. You can come back in 10 years and have $11,000 or what, $20,000. But the inverse is what holds true in Japan. If you want people to spend their money and go out and do stuff, then make the interest rate very low. Make it so low, in fact, that it's a waste of time to put your money in the bank. Yes, the bank will keep it safe for you, but you're not going to make any money. You're wasting your time sitting your money in the bank account. And they've made it zero, so they're saying don't even bother putting it in the bank. Put it under your damn mattress, because you're going to get the same interest rate. This is supposed to incite the Japanese people to go out and spend. Don't put it in the bank. Go start a business. Go buy stock. Go do anything. Become an entrepreneur. Buy a new car. Do anything with your money besides stick it in the bank. And it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked for 2 decades. And on top of that flat interest rate stuff, their Nikkei stock index has been flat as a pan as well. What's that? The Nikkei stock index is the equivalent of the Dow or the Fortune 500 in America. It's the major stock trading center. And they haven't had a growth rate for decades. It's been zero. It boggles the mind, actually. Because if you'd have put $50,000 in the Nikkei stock index, say in 1990, and put 50 grand, another 50 grand in the Dow in New York City in 1990, you'd have a lot of money in New York right now. You'd have a lot, even given the current recession. You would have a high rate of return on that investment. In Japan, they'd be giving you back your 50,000. Flat. So there's just nothing economically going on here. And part of the problem, actually, was part of their success in the past. How could that be? That whole system, this kind of inbred, interlocking system of business and government that I described at last lecture, where businesses invest in other businesses and the government invests in those businesses and they all work together. It's actually called keiharetsu. And this system is well known and well recognized, and it really helped Japan as they were forming up their economy. And what this means is like Toyota owns part of the steel company, and the steel company owns part of Toyota, and the government owns part of both, and they all work together in conjunction to make everybody successful. And that sounds great, and it worked fabulously for Japan in the 60s and 70s and 80s. But right now, it's making them completely worthless. It's very problematic because it's really not free market capitalism. You can't have all these entities helping each other. That's not capitalism. And it undermines capitalism because it takes out the innovation and the competition and people struggling and fighting to try to do something better than your other competitor. And this is what keeps businesses vibrant and edgy and on the cutting edge of technology. And Japan ain't doing none of that right now. Their businesses are extremely stagnant, as their consumer-based economy is too. On top of that, on top of everything else, the extremely high standards of living, and people live a long time and they like to live well, make for very high prices for everything still. Prices have been deflated, but they're still high. Tokyo has some of the highest standards of living and prices on planet Earth, particularly for real estate. The most expensive real estate you can buy is in Tokyo, Japan. And because all these prices are very high, this means that wages in Japan are very high too. You have to pay your people a lot of money to pay all those prices to live. So what? I mean, if I was a Japanese worker, yay for high wages. I like that. Yes, but look at the bigger picture. They have been hemorrhaging jobs and industries out of Japan, much like the United States, because the industries have been leaving the high wage places on planet Earth and going to low wage places on planet Earth. And there is a very, very, very similar analogy that I want you to know and understand between the Japanese and US systems as they're progressing right this second. The same type of outsourcing is occurring in both countries, and it's occurring in the same direction. So rich Japan and rich United States up here, where are the jobs and businesses going? Due south to lower wage areas. In America, they lost a lot of their auto manufacturing and manufacturing sector period to lower wage areas in Mexico and Latin America, and now increasingly China. In Japan, same story. Increasingly, people going south, businesses taking those jobs south to South Korea, to Philippines, to Taiwan, to Indonesia, and increasingly China. Same story, different sides of the Pacific. Now, On top of this powerful recession in the early 90s, another one in the late 90s, they're also dealing with the current world recession started in 2008, continuing to slam things down. And all of this in combo has made Japan the most stagnant place on planet Earth, especially for the rich countries. They have the lowest overall economic growth rate out of all the rich developed countries. All of them. If you looked at the top 30 economies, Japan has the lowest overall growth rate, a situation that does not look likely to change anytime soon. And it's been made worse by the people of Japan themselves. I'm not making fun of Japanese people. I love Japanese people. But they are part of the problem here. How so? Their population is shrinking. We talked about this way back when we talked about world population demographics. This is a society that is shrinking. The fertility rate is 1.1 or 1.2 tops. People are not having kids. Yes, they have 127 million people there now, but every year that number gets smaller. This means there is a decreasing workforce to work any industries that are there. Year after year. It also means it's a decreasing tax base for the government to tax those working class people in order to pay for all the benefits for the increasingly older people. And on top of that, those old people brackets are getting bigger. People live a long time in Japan, so there's more old people than middle-aged and young people now. And that working class people got to pay the taxes and pay for the retirement homes and everything for those increasingly old people who live a lot longer. And on top of this, it's a decreasing consumer base. So every year there's less people to go buy cars and real estate and Wiis. And increasingly those people are frugal too. So everything is just working against Japan getting back on its economic feet. Quite frankly, the future of a lot of Japanese companies is not even in Japan. This is becoming evident as every day passes. And we'll take an example, Toyota. Why would they continue to stay in Japan? They're a Japanese company. They're going to continue to be a Japanese company. But why would they invest in any jobs or industries or anything in Japan? Costs too much money. The Japanese population is shrinking. The consumer base is shrinking. They're increasingly frugal. They're not buying stuff. They're already rich. They already have cars. Why would Toyota do anything in Japan? And they're not. They're moving to more vibrant economies with growing populations in China and India. That's where they're going to be selling cars in the future, and ain't Japan. And that's perpetuating and accentuating the whole outsourcing thing. This is also compounded by xenophobia. And this is just mind-boggling. Xenophobia, it's a great word for Scrabble. This is basically fear of foreigners. So the Japanese people don't really dig immigration either. They don't like people coming there not to live. Now, when you go to visit Japan, you'll have a hell of a good time. It's a great place to party. And you're going to be paying them money to eat at their restaurants and sleep in their hotels, so they'll be very welcoming. But don't plan on staying, all right? They don't like foreigners there. Japan is 99% ethnically Japanese. They want to keep it that way, too. And this has really got the government in a pickle. What the hell are they supposed to do? They don't know. Here they are with a stagnant economy. They can't get people to spend. They can't even get people to procreate to continue on the society. And they're saying, hey, well, how about immigration? Nope, we don't want immigration either, and we're not having kids. And the government's saying, what the hell are we supposed to do then? The solutions they've come up with so far are a propaganda campaign to actually soften the concept of immigration to the Japanese public, which has not worked at all. They also have raised retirement age. So I think now retirement age in Japan is like 70 or 75, or maybe it's life. Maybe you just work till you die. And they even had a go home and have sex with your spouse day, trying to encourage fertility. And they finally came up with the greatest solution of all. I love this solution. Ready for this? Robots. Robots will increase productivity in the workplace. We won't need workers. We don't need immigrants. We don't need nothing. We'll have robots. And they'll do the jobs working in the factories, but also everybody will want a robot, so that'll spur a production boom, and it'll also spur a consumer boom since everybody will want a robot for home. That's our solution, robots. You heard it here first. On top of that, as of all of this wasn't bad enough for Japanese stagnation, they're politically stagnant as well. In fact, they're politically gridlocked. There has been a good old boy system in place in Japan, politically speaking, since World War II. Which means, yes, they're a constitutional monarchy. They do have an emperor who's just a figurehead. It looks like a democracy. It's based on the Great Britain system. And they have a prime minister, and they go out and vote for these people. But it's a two-party system, much like United Kingdom or America. But one political party has won the whole time. And it's the center-right conservative political party, it'd be like the Republican Party in the United States. They have held the prime minister, president position and the whole Japanese diet, this is the Congress, for the entire last 60 years. And this makes for a kind of an inbred system. It's almost just a perpetuated political class that's very stagnant. It's a good old boy system that to be in the government, you are usually related to someone who's already in the government. In fact, almost every major prime minister and economic minister and all ministerial positions are sons or daughters or great-grandsons or grandsons of former political people. It's a very closed system, and again, like the business, this closed model makes for not much progress, kind of stagnation, no new ideas, no new doing anything. In today's world, it's actually, people have gotten so pissed off about it, and there's such gridlock that it has been a prime ministerial parade for the last 5 years. There has not been a prime minister that's even lasted for more than a year for the last 5 years. And they're not even getting voted out of office. They're quitting because nothing can get done. And they're tired of the stagnation, and they're tired of butting their head up against the wall. And it's because it's a divided population. Divided about what? Divided about how to get their economy going. Divided about economic incentive. Divided about the kind of corrupt internal keiretsu system. They're divided about how to make the economy go. They're divided about immigration. They're divided about everything, about support in Iraq. They're divided about whether to change their constitution to have a more active military so they can support the U.S. They're divided about military bases, U.S. military bases in Japan. So really just kind of stuck. Nothing's working. The economy's flat. Growth is flat. People are gridlocked. Nothing's working. And that's why all the prime ministers are quitting. Forget about it. They're done. Not so. They are in a slump economically big time for 2 decades solid. They are politically gridlocked. That's been for about 5 to 10 years now. But they're also losing jobs. They're losing businesses. They're losing population. But they still are the second largest economy on planet Earth. Let's not forget that. And they are very well positioned here in the 21st century to make a major rebound. So what's up with Japan right this second? What's their future? Let's talk about that next.